All right, let me give you the Monday rundown for tomorrow's election. Number one, as I suggested in the video I just put out on creepy billionaire banker Steyer, voting has never been more critical. Ever been more critical. People say that every election cycle. This is it, folks. This is really, truly it. The 2016 election in many ways was a miracle, and it was outside the realm of possibility. And now we're being asked as citizens to question whether or not 2016 made any difference. And if it has not made any difference, do whatever you like. If it has begun to make a difference, both in terms of economics, in terms of world policy, in terms of balance with our foreign neighbors, in trade, in new jobs, in changing the tax, reforming the taxes and the rest of that. If this immigration thing hasn't taught you anything, then ignore it. Just ignore me. But if any of that means something to you, tomorrow is the deadline for deciding whether the next 2 years is going to be better, because it could be, or chaos, because it will be if the Democrats win. If the Democrats win in the House, all of the committees that have been working on the process of trying to unfold this whole fake Russian thing, the Mueller thing, the FBI, the DOJ, the foreign trade stuff, the corruption everywhere, the email scandals and the rest of that, all of that will disappear. All of it will disappear. That's the first thing. Page one, literally the eraser will go across all of that and it'll all disappear, and the committees will all be chaired by Democrats. The second thing is that there are at least 4 committees that will start the 5th of January. They'll be preparing ahead of time, but they'll start the 5th of January to work on impeachment hearings to have full time. And those will include the fake Russian investigation, ignoring, of course, that the Democrats are projecting Hillary's problems onto Trump and then attempting to nail him with Hillary's problems in some kind of fake claims and garbage. All right, so that's the first thing. The second thing is, and I get this every time I post something, I get people saying, well, these polls aren't real. You can't trust the polls. You better not trust the polls. The polls are all fake. 2016 told you the polls are fake. Yeah, that's true. It's all true. It tells us that the polls were in error, that the sampling was done wrong, that measuring and sizing the samplings were done wrong, that games have been played, and that you cannot trust the virtual amount of the poll or the outcome. Who's going to be the winner, the predicted winner. You cannot do that. Absolutely. So let's not do that. So let's take into account what else is going on. There's absentee voting. There is early ballot return, early ballot voting. Both of those are going on. The levels and increase of ballot applications and voting. There is the return in many of these states, I think something like 19 or 20 states. We get to find out how many Republicans have requested absentee or early ballots and how many Democrats do so. And in some cases, some states send them out to everybody. And then we get to see who's turning them back in. And the result has been so far that there is a 2 or 3 or 4% uptick by the Republicans relative to the Democrats compared to 2016, and that there is much more interest, and more of that interest is concentrated on the Republican side than there was in 2014. Now, we're playing with moving targets because with each passing election, 2012, 2014, 2016, 2018, I can count, right, every 2 years, with each passing election, more and more states are relying more and more heavily on absentee voting and early turn-ins and mail-in ballots. And so the result is that you can't do a one-on-one measurement. But what you can do is compare which people are voting and from which counties they're voting. So if the Republican concentrated counties are much more active in mail-in ballots and absentee ballots and early voting than are the Democratic strongholds in the inner cities, then you can tell a great deal about who it is that's energized for the election. And so far what it appears to be is that those elections are energized on the Republican side in most areas. I think Iowa is an exception, but Florida clearly is, New Jersey is, Missouri at some level, they're not doing much. Arizona clearly is, Nevada clearly is, and there are other states, some states like Montana, you can't tell because they don't tell you what it is. What else is new, huh, right? So here's the deal. In the Senate, there are 9 Republicans that are incumbents that are attempting to hold their seats, and that include the 2 Mississippi seats, the Nebraska seat, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, Wyoming, Nevada, and Arizona. Now, Arizona, of course, is replacing Jeff Snowflake, Flaky Flake, Snowflake, bent nose, left-leaning, somebody punched him in the face, Jeffy Snowflake. So the question is whether Martha McSally will replace him as a Republican or whether Kirsten Sinema, whatever her name is, will replace him. So, I mean, obviously there are 5 of these that I think are absolutely rock solid. The 2 Mississippi elections, the special election and the main election, are both going to go Republican. The special election, Hyde-Smith, that is probably only 10 points up. The other election is probably 25 points up. Nebraska is so good they don't even rate it. Tennessee, this is Blackburn replacing Fakey Bob Corker, middle streamer Bob, the guy that criticizes his own party's incumbent president the week of elections. What an idiot, right? What an idiot. Somebody ought to half-sheet him somewhere. So the question then is whether Blackburn can replace him and fill in, and it looks like she's clearly there. Texas is whether Ted Cruz can hold his space against, now you guys don't like it when I say Beto. No, you don't like it. You want me to call him Beto or Bedwetter or Bedouin or Be Gone, O'Rourke. Jeez. You know, when a guy who has an Irish last name and whose real name is Robert decides to be Beto, then we can call him Beto or Beat the Bushes or whatever we want because it's a fake name. So whatever you're going to do, Beto, go to it, will you? But don't be a senator. And then we've got Utah, and in this case, God help me, I'm going to try to be nice about Willard Mitt Romney, Rummy Dummy Romney. He's a Republican, kind of, sort of, but he's a George H.W. fake adopted stepson. Oh my God. Well, he'll be better than nothing, but I think he'll probably win the McCain Award for the next 2 years, if I am judging correctly. Then you've got Wyoming that will clearly, Barrasso, I think, will clearly hold his spot. And then you've got Heller trying to hold his spot and a couple points up in Nevada. And Arizona is right on the wire. And those 2 last elections, campaigns are teetering within 1%. So the outcome is going to depend on what you folks do tomorrow. That's it, today and tomorrow. Then there are 4 likely elections that I consider will probably flip, and those include North Dakota, where Heidi Heitkamp is going to get to go be a pig farmer or whatever she's going to do. In Missouri, Claire McCaskill could go lie to somebody else and get out of the Senate and quit faking that she is a moderate and she represents Missourians when she's got a little chain on her neck and she's following around behind Chucky Schumer. I don't know, here, Fido, Clydo, Claire. And then you've got Indiana, and that's a flip from, what the heck's his name? Oh, well, I'll think about it in a minute. And Florida, where Nelson and Scott are duking it out. Nelson's 79 years old. He looks like he can't see out of his eyeballs, but we'll see how that is. And those are all, those last three, Missouri, Indiana, and Florida, are again within 2 points, okay? Within 2 points. And then the distinctly possible ones in ranking order as I see them. So if we have a trickle, a red trickle, those 4 could all flip, probably. And that would be 4 gains. It would be 55, 45 Republicans. But if we get a good tidal wave, a full moon tide, then we could get Montana to switch to Matt Rosendale over Tester. We could get West Virginia to pull out our Manchin boy and replace him. We could get Minnesota. That's the 3rd one in the pile. Ohio has gone from 16 points with Sherrod Brown and what's his name? The Republican. I'll get it here in a minute. Let me get this out so I can keep track, because my poor little brain can't keep track of all of it. Is Jim Renacci. Did I get that right this time finally? That's gone from 16 points down to 7, and it's not quite in the margin of error. But it looks like there are 300,000 Republican new voters, and that there is a strong early turnout in Ohio. If that's the case, that'll flip. New Jersey with Menendez and Huggin. Huggin didn't help himself by being critical of Trump, but don't let that bother you today. He can dance around with Willard H.W. Romney and be a positive vote most of the time and not matter. Just fill a hole. Don't be a problem. And that's good. Stabenow could get replaced by perhaps the best candidate that's running for Senate this year, and John James. The guy is phenomenal. People are starting to pay attention. The last couple of polls show that him within the margin of error or very, very close to it. Again, a big Michigan show or a bunch of Democrat walkaways or the independents flipping a little bit more to the Republican side, recognizing that having runaway caravans coming into the country is probably not helpful to either to the nation or to their employment would be very helpful. Then we've got Wisconsin, excuse me, with Baldwin and Leah Vukmir, and that again is coming in closer. Maine has been out of everybody's signal. Somebody reminded me of it. You've got an independent in Angus. Angus, is that not Hereford? That's Angus. Oh, I shouldn't do this, really. I shouldn't do this. And that's a possible flip. And then Pennsylvania with Casey and Lou Barletta. And there are polls showing that that's closing, even though the official Real Clear Politics shows it at 14 points. Now, why did I point those out? Well, because it's all relative, Nobody thinks that Gillibrand in New York is going to be defeated. Why do we think that? Well, because the polls show her about 30 points ahead. And that's true with Cantwell in Washington. But when you start to get within 5 or 10 points, then you say, well, look, I don't have to take the totals as they come in. I don't have to look at who they think is going to win. I don't have to look at the matchup. But if, in fact, I see early balloting, heavy concentrations, counties with focus, increased voter registration, a change in energy, and even things like, and many of you pointed these things out, there are more yard signs than there were for the other bigger meetings, and Trump campaigning for them. Those things all make a difference. So that's the Senate as I see it. If I didn't mention your state, it's because you're so far off the beaten path that I can't help you. You know, nobody, if Dianne Feinstein loses, she loses to a Democrat. What am I going to say about that? And then you've got Bernie that's probably going to draw 70% of the vote in Vermont. Doesn't matter who runs against him. It could be Jesus Almighty, and he would still lose in Vermont, I think. All right, then you've got the House vote. And this is probably even every bit as critical, or if not more critical, than the Senate. What you have here, by most estimates, is that the Democrats have managed to hold most of the 195 House members they have. The Republicans had something like 30 or 40 members resign, which is good. Those guys, most of them weren't worth keeping around, like Paul Ryan. But when you have vacancies like that, you open a hole and you make it easier. You know, when you weed an area, when you take all the stuff out of an area, weeds grow up in it. And that's just you know, is it good weeds or bad weeds? Is it good plants or bad ones? And until they get established, you don't know. So it looks like the Democrats are somewhere around 15 to 18 winners from having the majority of the House of Representatives. And by most estimations, the Republicans are anywhere from 8 to 10 to 12 secure seats behind them, even though the Republicans started out with 240 representatives, and they only need 218 to hold the House. So they can sacrifice 22 and still run the House. It wouldn't run very well with a one vote majority, but they could sacrifice that and still technically be running the House. And the toss-ups, as most everybody sees them, there are about 39 or 40 toss-ups, and all but about 4 of those are Republicans. So you've got 35 seats at risk on the Republican side and 4 seats at risk on the Democrat side. So what's the likely outcome? Well, most of the outfits currently look at this. Let me just give you an idea. Real Clear Politics figures that it's going to be 221. The Democrats will win. They'll get 3 more seats than they need to seat it. 538, which is a Democrat shell phony, what's its name, Nate Silver deal that was so totally off last election that they are out of whack. But here's what they think. They think that there will end up with something like 233 Democrats. So that they would be gaining, what is that, 38 seats. That's the way they figure it. And they figure anywhere from 18 to 59 seats that they'll gain is within the 80% in the center of the deal. They are basically looking at there's no chance at all that the Republicans hold the House. CNN shows that the Democrats will have won 8 seats more than they needed to. Inside Elections seems to show it fairly close, somewhere within the margin of error. Larry Schweikert, if you follow him, has in the last day or so closed back in and thinks that the Republicans will end up with 220 to 230 to 225 or 230. That is that they'll hold the House. They might lose as little as 10 or 15 seats in the House and maybe as many as 20 seats. But if they lost 20 seats, they'd still barely hold it. So what do I think? Thank you for asking. I think that that if the voting goes proportionally as well as it did in 2016, that the Republicans will hold the House and they will come up with somewhere around 223 seats, 225 seats. They're still going to lose 15 seats the way I've got it figured. Now, we're going to be able to look at early returns, and we're going to be able to look at how those early returns fall out tomorrow. Indiana and Kentucky come in earliest. Florida comes in, there are a bunch of them. Florida, Georgia, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, South Carolina, Vermont, and Virginia come in at 7 o'clock Eastern time, which is 4 o'clock Pacific time. And we'll start to get some ideas of how this thing is shaking out. Not immediately then, but within an hour or two of then. I'm going to try to have a live broadcast, still trying to figure it out, to set that up for tomorrow and to be online sometime around 3 or 4 o'clock Pacific time, that is 6 or 7 o'clock Eastern time, to start catching these early ones and to see what is coming in. If I can get live, which would really be great, I'll start to get feedback from you. I can get responses from you. I'm going to invite you folks to send me some emails giving me early reports, sending me connections to reporting locations that you have, and we'll follow up on it, and I'll attempt to stay on top of it. There are, let's see, probably 40 house races that we can watch as the night progresses. There are a half dozen in Florida, a couple in Georgia, a couple in New Hampshire, believe it or not, 4 in Virginia, 3 in North Carolina, 2 in Ohio, 1 in West Virginia, and 4 in Illinois, 2 in Kansas, 4 of them in Michigan, 3 in New Jersey, that will start to tell us in the early hours whether or not the wave is going one way or the other. And then, of course, we'll have at least a half dozen Senate seats and some governorships that are also there. So I have not spent any time on the gubernatorial, gooby races, the governor races, because, until it settles and until we start to get a sense of it, doesn't make any difference. And I can spend a lot of time looking at what the probabilities are a month out and really not know anything. So we're going to get close now shortly. Florida's got a great big governorship. Georgia's got a big governorship. New Hampshire has one. Let me see who else does. South Carolina probably is fairly safe. Who else is in close? Illinois, it's pretty lopsided. The Maine governor race could be interesting. The Michigan governor race could be interesting. The Wisconsin governor race will, of course, be interesting. And Pennsylvania looks like that's probably going to go Democratic. Let's see if there's another race. Minnesota is within 7 points, so it could make a difference. And New Mexico is probably fairly close, within 8 points or so. And now, let me say this for the third time in this broadcast, in this video, the points are relative, okay? We're not saying who's going to win. We're saying we're looking at these because there may be some apparent closeness, okay? All right. Hey, look, I look forward to interacting with all of you tomorrow. I've been a little bit goofy about this because it's playful to be fun, to have fun about it. But secondly, it is critically important. And if you have not voted, a pox on you if you don't vote tomorrow. A pox on you. You must absolutely, positively go after it tomorrow, because this is, if there's ever been an election in your adult life, in my adult life, look how old I am, in my adult life that matters. This one matters perhaps the most. So thanks so much for watching. I hope you have been entertained and have learned something. Give a thumbs up if you will. Subscribe if you will. They don't always pay attention to it. Hit the little bell, and supposedly they'll let you know once in a while that I've posted something. But again, thanks so much, and I really truly appreciate your comments.